for those apps.
Yeah.
That's all that they're there for. They're not fun sequences. They serve no purpose. It's just, promoting these fucking smartphone apps.
Right.
That's what I heard about the Emoji Movie, but we're live, by the way. I just had to get in on this conversation.
Yeah, and I would say, like, the way they write the teenagers is super shallow. Like, I understand that kids love their fucking phones, but no girl is going to be like, oh, he sent me a weird emoji, I'm not going to talk to him. It'd be like, well, why wouldn't he just say, like, my phone malfunctioned or something? The way they, like, I don't know. I would be very interested to have, like, been a fly on the wall for them, like, brainstorming ideas for this.
So would you say that the way it was pimping out the product of, emojis, which of course you can always buy new emojis and stuff, did it feel kind of like mid 80s cartoons where literally every episode is just, here's a new toy you can buy?
I think there was a little bit more effort than that, but not much.
I would say that you said be a fly on the wall during the planning for this movie. I would almost guess, maybe not guess, but I would not be surprised if someone told me that instead of them planning out a movie, they were sent a style sheet by Sony on which to adhere for the movie, and they just made the movie based on that.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the idea was, let's do what the Lego movie did, but they didn't have that creative spark, I guess. Or this just felt like people, being assigned a task to perform.
And you were saying there were elements that were ripped right out of the Lego movie?
Oh, yeah. Hawk knows what I'm talking about. Hawk, the little robots that delete people in the Emoji Movie?
Yeah, those were
right out of the Lego Movie.
Yeah, those were very clearly not part of that movie. They kind of they don't feel like they belong in that movie. They look kind of, what do they look like? I'm trying to think.
Sci-fi death robots, I guess.
Very generic sci-fi death robots. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of when Despicable Me came out.
Mm-hmm.
Despicable Me, of course, had their minions, and then besides that, there was also the what was the superhero animated movie?
Megamind?
Megamind, yeah. Megamind also had minion-like robots, or characters.
No, they had David Cross in that.
Right, but it was there were a bunch of them, and there were.
No, there wasn't. I thought there was just one. Like, it was a sidekick. I haven't seen Megamind in a while, so you could be right.
Yeah, no, there were a bunch of them.
Okay. I liked Megamind.
I think there was only one that had David Cross's voice, but then there were a bunch of, like, other guys who were with him.
I know that. I remember David Cross being, like, his main sidekick.
Right. And now the difference, of course, is those movies came out, like, right around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's slightly more forgivable in that respect, because that's, there just happened to have been, a ton of, a lot of time has happened since Lego Movie in this.
Right. Yeah. The Despicable Me and Megamind was kind of a fluke. Like, those did come out like a month in between each other.
Well, it wasn't even a fluke. I mean, that's a phenomenon that happened during several years, where two movies with similar plot blueprints or ideas come out around the same time, because two different minds had a different idea and arrived at it at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then the two movies just kind of come together similarly.
Like, by the way, David Cross's character in Megamind is literally called Minion.
He's like a goldfish, right?
Yeah.
Or not? Yeah, he's like some
fish
kind of
like a fishbowl suit.
Yeah.
I would say that the Emoji Movie is not even really all that deserving of hatred or thought whatsoever.
That's how I felt about it watching it, because I watched it it will probably make my worst of the list, just because I haven't seen too much that was that bad, but it'll be low. I almost
disliked Smurfs: The Lost Village more.
Okay, I haven't watched that one.
It's just kind of Smurfs is insulting in a different way, and also just crushingly boring. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Emoji Movie is kind of like, you want to see how much worse it's going to get, but in a roundabout way, Smurfs is so not compelling that it almost makes you more upset with how much it's wasting your time.
Right.
Well, so welcome to a movieboozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Hawk Ripjaw
Hello.
and Bill Leon.
Hello.
This episode's already in progress, but I just had to hit play because we were conversing about a subject that we were going to get to anyway. So, anyway, so we have a few things to discuss today. We're going to be talking about Paddington 2, the latest live-action / CGI movie. Sequel to the original Paddington. We're going to be talking about Darkest Hour, the Winston Churchill biopic. We're going to be talking about I, Tonya. We're going to be talking about The Post. Now, did you guys have any other topics you wanted to cover tonight?
I don't think so.
I watched the new Dave Chappelle specials, but reviewing a stand-up comedy special, go watch them. They're funny. That's all I really have to say about it. It's like the first of the two new ones had me constantly laughing. Like, I haven't laughed that frequently in quite some time.
I find it fascinating that he puts out two at a time, because last year with Netflix, he put out two at the same time as well, each one with a different topic, or not topic, but theme that his topics kind of explored. Yeah,
this one, these are similar. It seems like the way he's talking on stage that he's going to retire from doing stand-up.
He's going to take another break, yeah.
Oh, okay. The way he was talking about it made it seem like, oh, these are going to be the last specials. But I mean, I hope not, because like I said, they were really funny.
You know,
well, he said in the first special that he's going to take a break from doing comedy because he's too good at it, and then in the second special, he said that he was recording the last of his Netflix special. So I think he's just done with his deal with Netflix for now. I'm assuming his next special, if he does one, will probably be with HBO.
I will give you guys, before we transition out of this, a little sample. Have you watched it, Hawk?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you know this joke, but Ken doesn't. He said, Donald Trump being the president is like riding in the backseat of an Uber and noticing a crack pipe on the passenger seat.
Right.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I definitely want to see him talk about the year that we had last year.
He talks a lot about the president stuff, and then in the second special, it kind of revolves around sexual harassment in Hollywood. Like, that's the main topic of the second special.
Yeah, and he doesn't take prisoners, so it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on that topic. That said, we'll go ahead and move on to the first film of the night, which we'll save Paddington 2 a little bit for later, because I think that one is one we might have the most to say something about. We're going to begin with Darkest Hour,
which I saw just a couple hours ago.
You made it out to see it. Excellent. I'm glad that that happened. So first of all, since it's fresh in your mind, I want your opinion. Did you like this movie?
I did. I think Joe Wright is always a director who's, when I see his name pop up, I'm like, okay, I know if nothing else, this is going to be a good looking movie.
That's true.
Even Pan, as terrible as that was, that movie had a good look to it. Because Joe Wright knows his way around a camera and knows how to tell a story with visuals, and he knows how to make an image compelling and exciting, no matter what it is.
I'm certainly mixed on his stuff. I love Atonement and Hannah. I didn't see The Soloist or Pride and Prejudice, but Anna Karenina and Pan were both mixed for me. Well, Pan was just awful, but Anna Karenina was hard to follow, and as a result, not particularly that compelling. And when you're going to tell a story that's that complicated, I think you need to give it more time to breathe than he gave it.
Yes, I mean, and those two movies, Anna Karenina and Pan, again, aren't movies that are necessarily great, but they do look good.
Oh yeah, visually they're both quite compelling.
That's all I'm leading out with, for starters, is that just on a very base level, Joe Wright is a reliably his movies look good.
I would wager to say that I took a hard look at the history of biopics that are out there. This might be, in my opinion, the best looking biopic since Lawrence of Arabia.
It's up there.
Because it's stylish, it's it's beautifully shot, and considering that this biopic, for all intents and purposes, spends most of its time indoors in what should be stuffy meeting rooms and apartment rooms, and it should be a very a very tight and the phrase is evading me. This is a film that opens up in a big way. He found fascinating ways to photograph tight corridors, and he finds time to pull the camera out. I love those shots that take place throughout the film, sort of as transitions, where he zooms out and you see kind of a top-down view of the entire situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great thematic element to use for the cinematography also, because it really emphasizes the weight of the world that's coming down on this one man.
Yeah, and it's you nailed it with the way that like these conversations and things would have a very flat look to them if he hadn't done more with it. And I think that he makes the images look very beautiful and very very lively without making them overbearing.
And this film would have been dynamic enough if it was competently shot and they went with the normal script that they use, because it's a very witty and creative script on its own. But the way they shoot it is really it takes it up to really, in my opinion, this is the best looking movie of last year, bar none.
I would argue that Blade Runner 2049 was better looking, but in terms of drama, yeah, this one takes it.
Well, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue with you if you're making that, assertion. But I would take the other path.
Sure, but I think they're also two very different movies, and I'll get to that in a second as well. But I also think that in the hands of a lesser director that tried to do the same thing stylistically as Joe Wright, the movie would have fallen apart as being overbearing with its visuals in terms of the movie trying to make a good-looking movie more than tell a compelling story.
And what works here is that while the visuals are flashy, they're not so flashy as it distracts from the basic story that's going on and the characters, and exactly. So it serves them while at the same time it shows off, and it peacocks in a big way, because every frame of this movie is just perfectly put together, and I just can't say enough. If this film isn't nominated for a cinematography Oscar, I will eat my hat.
Oh, the writer of this is doing the Freddie Mercury biopic, which is titled Bohemian Rhapsody. Could you get a little more creative with your fucking titles, please?
I would not.
Also wrote The Theory of Everything. Okay, this guy's a little biopic.
I wouldn't get too confident about the Freddie Mercury one, because this has been in development hell for so long, and it originally started with Sacha Baron Cohen as Freddie Mercury, and then he dropped out of creative differences with the band, and now it's
Mr. Robot.
Yeah, what's his name? I can't remember what his name is.
Rami Malek.
Rami Malek. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it says Mike Myers has an uncredited role.
Probably. So the band, going off topic just a tiny bit, the band Queen, the original plan for the movie was to be about Freddie Mercury, and it would end with his death. The band preferred for the death to happen around the midway point of the film, and the remainder of the film to be the band moving on from that and continuing to thrive, moving on from that loss.
Terrible idea.
It is. So I think, all respect to the screenwriter who did a very good job on this movie. I'm concerned that his ideas and his writing will kind of be suffocated by the whims of the band itself.
Isn't that why Sacha Baron Cohen left the project too?
It is.
He was like, "Oh, that's a dumb idea. Like, who gives a shit about Queen after Freddie Mercury?" No offense to them as people, but like, I don't know any of their material that they made after the fact. Like, I guarantee you when they play live with their new singer, like the songs that get the most reaction is the songs they did with him. So
right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
No, it's interesting. But so of course the big thing with darkest hour is, of course, Gary Oldman's performance, which, I mean, no matter how good the movie is or what you think of it, I don't think a single person has been able to contest that his performance is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and Oldman's performance in this film, not only is it fantastic, but first of all, the makeup department has to be commended for seamless, flawless makeup. I'm not saying that it made him look exactly like Winston Churchill. I'm saying it made him look like a much more portly, elderly man without anything. It didn't look at all like they did him up.
I mean, if I could look into his eyes and say, "Oh, that's Gary Oldman," because it's Gary. I can recognize Gary Oldman's eyes. But apart from that, I don't think if someone told you that it was Gary Oldman, you may not spot him.
Mm-hmm. And you can't really tell that it's absolutely. And the makeup job is, first of all, this automatically tells me if we're capable of making makeup jobs like this, then all those really crappy old people makeup jobs that they've done, like the worst I have to say is that comes to mind for me is in Prometheus.
Yeah, the Guy Pearce.
Oh,
I almost said Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
Guy Pearce's makeup job.
Yeah, there's no excuse for a makeup job that bad when someone's capable of doing something like this. And
yeah,
and not only, I mean, his performance is great, but you also have excellent supporting performances from Kristen Scott Thomas, Ben Mendelsohn, Stephen Delane. Wonderful.
Billy James.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of great character actors who show up in this, and all of them deliver wonderfully.
Ben Mendelsohn threw me off.
How so?
Because I love Ben Mendelsohn. He is a really good actor. He is an excellent character actor, but mostly in villainous roles. So whenever I see him on screen, I was like, I don't trust him. Because he's got such a presence of menace. Which even in his first 5 minutes of screen time in this, I couldn't quite shake. He just kind of got that look about him, which is fine. I think he's great, and I think he overcame that typecasting after a couple of scenes. But that was my snap reaction to him as the king was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it should be noted. You mentioned that he is the king, and not just the king. He's the king that, for those who saw the King's Speech, we're talking about that king. And it's worth noting because it's a completely different performance as George VI. And I actually dug his performance because it was much more understated. You could tell that there was a lisp there and the stutter that he has, but it wasn't nearly as overwrought.
He also didn't seem that confident as a character. It was a confident performance as an unconfident character.
Mm-hmm. Unconfident, but also, I mean, that fits his character for the time. I mean, he was pretty new to the job, so to speak, and all of a sudden facing down the fact that his country is going to war. Yeah, that's not something that I wouldn't feel very confident going through something like that.
Right, and when I mentioned the unconfidence, I just mentioned that in regards to his character in the King's Speech, who had these personal problems with conducting himself, and so I think dealing with Winston Churchill, his new prime minister, also during a time of war, it was very stressful for him, and so I think Ben Mendelsohn rolled all of these attributes into the character in a very subtle way. Mm-hmm. It worked really well for a movie that was sometimes funny, but just very character driven.
Oh man, really? I just read that apparently John Hurt was originally cast to play Neville Chamberlain.
Okay. I would see that.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, he had his cancer and he passed away. That's too bad because the person who don't get me wrong, it was Ronald Pickup who played Chamberlain, and that was a great performance too. But it would have been great to see John Hurt, and that would have been a wonderful final role for him.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that you loved the score for this movie. I think the score was very good. I don't know if I would call it my favorite of the year, but I did really, really like it.
It really builds, and I like a good score that builds to a crescendo and has a good overarching theme to it. That's one thing that a lot of films lack these days is something like that, and Darkest Hour has it. The ending credits, I sat through the entire roll of the ending credits just to hear more of the score because I was that compelled by it.
Yeah, the score was good. I liked how effective the movie was at the way it bookended itself. The very beginning, you have the opening credits and it's just completely silent until the music kicks in, and the ending is a lot more triumphant and dramatic. You know, and like you said, the way it builds. I also like the variety in it. There is some orchestral stuff. There's a lot of piano, but the way that it mixes the variety in with what the mood of that scene is was really effective with setting the tone.
Yes, and I was also another performance that I have to mention. Stephen Delane, who played Halifax, he was the person who was originally offered the role of Prime Minister when they were not kicking Chamberlain out, but he refused it as a political move, and that ended up kicking him in the ass because Churchill essentially destroyed him. Or, well, rather you would say Halifax destroyed himself because he was, a hardcore pacifist and not wanting to go to war, despite the fact that they were deep in the midst of one.
You're right.
And it's kind of a tragic character. And Stephen Delane is one of those character actors who shows up in a lot of shit. I mean, he in Game of Thrones, he was Stannis Baratheon. Excellent on that show. He was in Zero Dark 30. He actually where I first noticed him was on the John Adams miniseries for HBO when he played Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
And it was actually a really good performance. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I
actually spent the first half of the movie thinking that Stephen Delane was Mark Rylance.
Really?
They look a lot alike.
I'm trying to picture it right now, so I'm Googling it. Mark Rylance. Okay, and Stephen Delane. Oh, okay.
Especially their Google pictures. Yeah.
I can kind of see it.
Especially having not seen Mark Rylance in a movie recently. What I remember of him was from Bridge of Spies, so I just kind of had the face structure in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see where you're coming from on that. I wouldn't say there's a direct comparison, but that's interesting that you saw that. So back to Darkest Hour. And oddly enough, Mark Rylance was in Dunkirk. So come to think of it, there's an interesting connection. And it's worth noting that it cements it that, in my opinion, there were 3 wonderful British movies that came out last year that each dealt with Dunkirk in a very specific way.
Mm-hmm.
You had the one that dealt with the battle, you had one that dealt with the political machinations, and you had one that dealt with sort of the British, the war at home, the propaganda campaign that the film media put together, and the people who worked behind that. Really,
that was their finest, right?
Yeah, Their Finest, which is on Hulu, by the way.
Alrighty.
So definitely recommend watching it. I saw it twice because my folks, my dad is a big fan of Bill Nighy, and so
who's not?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone likes Bill Nighy, the science guy. So anyway, yeah, it was an excellent film too. Their Finest is probably the lesser of those 3, but they're all in their own way very distinctive and good. And
I still renounce the comparisons and contrasts drawn between Dunkirk and Darkest Hour, because I maintain that they're about the same event, but they're about two very different things. It's almost it's not the same as comparing like White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen.
Well, yeah, I'm not. By no means do I say you can compare the 2 films on their level as for as movies covering the same event, but all three of these movies covered the same event from a completely different perspective.
Well, I just see people people are like putting Dunkirk and Darkest Hour against each other. Like, oh, this was the better Dunkirk movie this year. It's like, well, it doesn't fucking matter because they're about two different things, kind of. I mean,
oh yeah, and honestly, the Darkest Hour is the movie that has really the least to do with Dunkirk. While Dunkirk is depicted in the film, it's more about what the people did on all three films deal with it, but in their own ways, and the way they cover it, it's a lot like saying that Casablanca is the greatest war movie ever made, even though there's no war depicted in it, while it takes place during a war.
That's one of those things. Like, yeah, I mean, it's
now if you're going to say which movie did I enjoy,
America Winter Soldier is like a Cold War thriller, and it kind of is, but it's really kind of not either. It's one of those buzz phrases.
Exactly. Yeah, it's easy to lump things in, and people like categorizing. Now, I will say, from a level of what film did I enjoy the most, I prefer Darkest Hour.
Oh yeah, I do. I think I do as well. I think that Dunkirk is an excellent experience. It is a concussive and very stressful action film. It does a lot of things really, really well, and I say that as a documented general non-fan of war films,
yes.
Which means a lot. But I think that Darkest Hour is the more thematically and emotionally satisfying film.
And so, yeah, that I would say that that's probably the best way to put it. Now, I'm trying to think. Was there anything about Darkest Hour we haven't covered yet? Because we've kind of talked about it for a while.
I think that just the last tiny little thing, Lily James' character was a tiny bit underdeveloped, where her first scene is her bursting in tears when Churchill yells at her, and then in the next scene she's an incredibly skilled typist that does everything almost perfectly for him.
Well, the sense that I got, it wasn't that her character was underdeveloped so much as, first of all, the film does skip a lot of time, but also the sense I had is that he would do that to anyone, regardless of their talent.
Sure.
And I think the point that Joe Wright was trying to make with that scene and the way it was shot is that his personality was, in some ways, poisonous to having a normal working relationship. And you had to get over the fact that he was not the easiest person to associate with. And in fact, they make that point strongly, that most people in Parliament hated his guts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, when his wife had that talk with him about being nicer, that went from that first scene of him being very abrasive, which, to be honest, could have been his way of vetting his new assistant, to him and his assistant being quite friendly with each other.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's even like more development in there that didn't make the cut.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting the sense of. Yes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out if he has a director's cut out there. I'm not going to say that that's necessarily the case, because it's easy to make that claim, but you're right. It jumps enough time, and character development in that case does feel a little fast. I'm not picking it out as a particular complaint, because I'm not sure I would miss it that much. Though in general,
it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next film on our list.
I have one more thing to point out about Darkest Hour that I found amusing is the movie. I'm sure you've read this, Ken, but the movie had a $20,000 cigar budget, and Gary Oldman got nicotine poisoning from it.
Oh God!
What?
How does that even happen?
Constantly smoking cigars in a way that Winston Churchill would, and not being prepared for it like Winston Churchill was.
Yeah.
God. I do have an update on the Freddie Mercury biopic. The IMDb says that the film will end in 1985 with their Live Aid performance. So it doesn't look like they're going the route of 2 half movies.
Oh, good.
That's good. One
Now,
random thought. By the way, one random thought that I had regarding that Queen biopic. You said that Mike Myers is appearing in a.
His name is he's listed on the IMDb page, but there's no role revealed or listed.
The only thing I can think of is if he's going to do a cameo. A few years ago, he
as Keith Moon. Is that what you're gonna say?
No.
Okay.
Although that would be interesting. But if
you guys know he was supposed to play Keith Moon at one point, right?
I did not.
Oh, really? Yeah, no. Apparently, this was years ago. This was back in when I was in high school, I think. And I never wanted to see that happen, and I don't even think Mike Myers was that interested in making it, which is why it fell through.
The one thing that I was thinking about is that a few years ago, Mike Myers directed a film.
Shep Gordon.
Yeah, about Shep Gordon, and. When I look at pictures of Shep Gordon, I could plausibly see Mike Myers kind of do a Shep Gordon impersonation. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the people that he represented, he didn't represent Queen, but a lot of artists who were around at that time he represented. It'd be interesting if maybe this is just me making a random guess. What if he played Shep Gordon in a cameo scene?
That'd be interesting. Yeah. My question is, are they gonna address Under Pressure, and who is going to play Bowie?
Address.
I mean, is it going to be? Is it going to show them? Is Bowie going to be in the movie? That's really what I mean. Because of Under Pressure, is Bowie going to be in the movie?
I think
that there will be a part. I think there'll be a part where it's referenced and maybe plays on the radio and how that helped Queen as a band. But I don't think it'll show. I don't think they'll have somebody portray Bowie. They'll just kind of address it.
That might be the smart thing to do. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I was reading the trivia page for the IMDb, and it's there were so many production problems. They said Bryan Singer would disappear from the set for days.
Yeah, who replaced him, by the way?
It's listed. I got to pull the page back up. I don't remember the guy's name. I will tell you in a second. His name is Dexter Fletcher.
Oh, yeah.
And Dexter
maybe they'll
Fletcher,
cast Michael Sheen to be Techno Bowie.
Is this for real? Did he direct Doom? Oh no, he's an actor. This guy.
Yeah.
103 acting credits.
Oh, Dexter Fletcher. Yeah, the dude was in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
This dude directed. I haven't seen it, but the Across the Universe version of The Proclaimers. He directed Sunshine on Leith, and he also directed the Taron Egerton movie Eddie the Eagle that came out last year.
Yeah.
Or 2016, not last year.
that movie was fine.
It was okay.
Yeah, I didn't see Eddie the Eagle, but I
don't go out of your way to say
Eddie Eagle is a movie.
Yes.
What I will say about Dexter Fletcher is I loved him in he's one of those character actors again who's in a lot of stuff and is usually good. He was great in the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers.
Right. Which they release on DVD in a tin.
Yeah, I own that.
Okay. That's all I know about that show, and that Ron Livingston is in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and Damian Lewis, who is more of Homeland fame.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Dexter Fletcher was in the highly underrated Bill Murray movie, The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Is it just me, or does Dexter Fletcher remind you guys of the guy that owns the 50s diner in the prequels?
The what?
Dexter Jetster from
the
prequels.
Name. Okay, Jesus. I thought you were talking about his looks.
His looks.
Did he put on a lot of weight or something?
No, the character's name is Dexter Jetster in that.
Yeah, you're right. It took me a moment. Seriously, that's what I was going.
Listen. I'm not going to judge you for not knowing little minute facts about the fucking prequels.
Oh man. Anyway, so now that we've talked up that and talked about Darkest Hour, I'd like to say a few words about I, Tonya.
I saw it as well, by the way.
Well, I'll give you the floor, Bill. Tell us about I, Tonya.
I just want to say right off the bat that the trailers for this really kind of make it seem like a quirky comedy film. Like maybe it'll go into some darkness, and the film's not outright dark, But when Tanya gets hit, it's usually like you don't see it coming, and it's not played for laughs. It's not played quirky. It's like she got fucking hit. So I had joked in the group chat, I was like, this movie needs to come with a trigger warning, like shit. Because, I mean, abuse is a big theme throughout the story. And
Yes, I mean,
for those who don't know what this is about, if you're, a little young or you haven't been paying attention to the news, because I know the real Tanya Harding's been getting interviews and popping up in the news a lot now because of this film. Tanya Harding was a figure skater in the Olympics back in the 90s, and her boyfriend or her husband, Jeff Gillooly, hired a dude to whack her competition, Nancy Kerrigan, in the kneecap with a pipe. I think that's with a pipe, right?
Yeah, it was some sort of a pipe. Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a pipe. It was one of those telescoping batons.
A blunt object.
Those things are awesome.
She got whacked in the knee with a blunt object, and it was a huge scandal. Weird Al references it in his song Headline News, which is the first time I had ever heard about the name, because I was a little too young to have, heard of that when it was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the film is interesting. It really does try to paint this portrait of a very troubled young woman who has dealt with a lot of shit in her life.
Yeah, and this movie is overly sympathetic to Tanya Harding, and really,
would you say to a detriment?
To an extent. I first of all, I do want to say that I rather enjoyed this movie, and I thought it was very funny and entertaining. But I would say yes to a detriment, because it basically takes away
Nancy Kerrigan. Well, I will say this: Nancy Kerrigan has like no character in this. I don't even remember if she has any lines.
No, other than her famous.
Oh my God, what is it? I forget. Yeah,
where she's why?
That's it. Yeah.
But no, what it does is it essentially makes an argument that she had nothing to do with the actual hit, which I don't think has ever been fully established. I think, and I think that completely writing off that is disingenuous. Now, granted, I'm not it's not like I've followed this case like the Kennedy assassination or some crazy thing. But what I've read up on it, there's no hard evidence to say that she knew it was going to be a hit. But at the same time, there's the ambiguity is there, and the film tries to make it pretty clear that she, the only thing she thought was that that her on again, off again husband, I guess you would call him, had plans to basically send threatening letters to Nancy, which itself is pretty fucked up. Although they also even try to make it a righteous thing, because she received letters and supposedly they came from someone, one of the competing skaters, possibly Nancy. So, they try to really wash a lot of blame from her. Which, here's the thing: I think they could have made this film work without doing that, and it would have created a more fully formed view of her character. Don't get me wrong; the Margot Robbie's performance, or Robbie.
I think it's Robbie. I'm not sure.
Her performance is solid, and
she's
really
wonderful in this. Yeah, and she washed that nasty Suicide Squad taste right out of my mouth, because I know people praise her performance in that, but not me, not this guy. she was doing a fucking impression of the cartoon Harley Quinn.
Yeah, and then you have Sebastian Stan playing her husband /
the Winter Soldier, he was really good in this.
Yeah, completely.
He's a reliable actor.
Yeah, and he doesn't look at all like the Winter Soldier.
No. Well, actually, I was going to say he kind of looks like Freddie Mercury. Like he could have played Freddie Mercury with that mustache.
I was going to say he looks like Napoleon Dynamite's brother.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too. When he has the glasses on.
He even kind of has the voice a little bit.
Mhm.
kind of the wussy voice.
He's got those dad glasses.
And of course, I mean, no talk about I, Tonya is complete without referencing Allison Janney as
Oh my goodness. She
brought the house down.
yeah, well I was going to say, did she win the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress?
Yes, I believe she did.
Okay.
And well deserved. She's had that coming for a long time. I think that was her first major. Well, you know what? She might have gotten some Emmys, but
as cruel as she was, there were parts that made me laugh. Especially like when Tanya's a kid and she's taking her to train and shit. She's like cussing in front of the little kids and smoking, and she's like, I don't fucking care.
Well, what's great about her performance is as fucked up and mean and mean spirited and cruel as she is, like a real life abusive relationship sort of situation. They don't write off the fact, they don't make the argument that she hates Tanya. In her own fucked up, completely bizarre way, she loves her daughter. She just does not seem to. She goes about it in a way that is just plain wrong, and she makes no apologies to it, which makes her a true villain. And because the best villains are ones who are convinced that they are doing right. And yeah, I just looked it up. She's been Allison Janney's been nominated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Golden Globes. This is her first win.
Nice.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that she'll get an Oscar nomination and probably a win.
Hopefully, I can't think of another supporting actress role off the top. But I mean, no, that was a lead.
Somebody in Lady Bird.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, as far as the hold on. In fact, let me look that up. So who was up for the Golden Globe? Supporting. Allison Janney was against Hung Chow for Downsizing. Mary J. Blige for Mudbound. That was a good performance too. Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, also solid. And Octavia Spencer for Shape of Water. I would say Laurie Metcalf and Mary J. Blige are the closest competitors there.
Does the Oscars nominate Netflix movies now? I thought they were like, what was that? The Beasts of Burden? What's that?
Beasts of No Nation?
Beasts of No Nation. That's the one that got the stuff.
Beasts of Burden?
we were talking about the Rolling Stones earlier, and I think Beasts of Burden got stuck in your head.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that Allison Janney is the best chance. Now, as far as your thing about Netflix, I think that technically these Netflix movies, the way they release them, they could qualify, but there is a huge anti-Netflix movement amongst the members of the Academy, and I think the best example of that is when earlier last year when the movie Okja premiered at Cannes Film Festival. And the Netflix label came up on the screen, everyone in the theater just booed the shit out of it.
Which is shitty. Like, why?
Because it's a reaction against Netflix's release model. Because Netflix's release model is, if the movie's good enough, we'll give it a theatrical release. But when we say theatrical release, we mean it'll play in 3 cities for a couple of weeks, and but we'll also drop it on Netflix the exact same day.
So, quote unquote, counts because they released it in 3 cities, and that's rubbing people the wrong way.
It's right. This thing of there's a general feeling, and I completely understand why there's a reaction against it. There's a general feeling that Netflix is trying to kill the concept of going to the movie theater.
I don't think that Netflix can kill the concept insofar as people being unwilling to go to the theater. I mean, you can't stop me from going to the movie theater if I want to go see a movie in theaters.
And you know what? I think that the person who has the best thing to say about this is Leonard Maltin. When asked if he thinks that the theater going experience is on its way out, he says people who not everyone can afford the other types of dates that going to the movies, dinner and a movie is the classic date because it's a way for you to have a shared experience with each other. and talk it over. It gives you a discussion item, but it also gives you a moment of kind of subtle intimacy where you're sitting next to the person and there's no suggestion of necessarily anything going on there because you're in a public forum, but the lights are out and you're next to the person. So it's one of those
do I need to tell my Borat story again?
Oh boy.
No, don't tell me.
just yeah, it's
I'm not even sure I know what the Borat story is, but it sounds
the girl was trying to kiss me watching Borat, and I was like, this is art. I gotta watch this. Get out of here.
Oh, this is art. I've never heard that said about Borat.
It is.
Although it is worth noting that over this past year, movie theater attendance was the lowest it's been in 24 years, as ticket prices were 4% higher than they have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the price is going to go up, and it might even get to the point where major releases like blockbuster films, there's probably going to be a line of demarcation where suddenly you have the film going experience becomes more of an art house kind of thing. But I don't think it's ever going away for good. There's something to be said for seeing movies on the big screen, and I highly doubt that Disney, for instance, wants you to just watch their stuff on a streaming service. They want the injection of money that comes from
the stuff.
Oh yeah, Disney is not going to put off that sweet ass IMAX 3D money for the next Star Wars ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, something we to jump back into I, Tonya. Another performance that I love. He's not in the movie a lot, but Bobby Cannavale as Martin Maddox, the hard copy guy.
Yeah, I love Bobby Cannavale, so I wanted more of him in the movie. But yeah,
he's not in the movie a lot. But his role, he's basically the hard copy producer who was most responsible for highlighting the whole scandal and making it a big business. And he's got this wonderful kind of Jersey Shore kind of hairdo and shitty greasy oil tan look that you would expect from a douchey just like tabloid star would have. And his performances, he makes for some of the film's funniest moments.
Yes. Yeah, I
can't. The thing that I found myself enjoying most in this film was the comedy. It really does play this for comedy, and it is undoubtedly a comedy from beginning to end. So you can forgive some of the fact that it's not straight up telling the history as it was of the event.
This is not an original concept, but I thought being able to jump to interview segments really helped the narrative a lot.
Certainly, and it gave kind of a Scorsese-ish. The term I heard someone call it was Scorsese light.
There's in the trailers, it's like the Martin Scorsese of figure skating movies.
Right, and that I think is fair to an extent. I would say, in and amongst the other Scorsese light films out there, like what was that one?
American Hustle. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, American Hustle, and such. I think this rates quite highly against those. Or American Made that came out last year with I haven't watched that.
That Bill, you will like it.
Really?
Yeah, American Made's a lot of fun. It's
okay.
Like
very entertaining.
Actually, much like this, Bill, it's sort of a comedic take on the story that it's telling. Now, American Made is a little more serious, but not much. It very much is. It very much. It has that same Wolf of Wall Street angle of we had it all, we got too ambitious, and we fucked it all up.
It's a lot. It's very cheeky too, more so almost than Wolf of Wall Street.
That's very It definitely has a cheekiness to it, and it emphasizes that that everything he did was completely awful and illegal. And I recommend it. And I recommend I, Tonya. It's not a perfect movie, and I would say though it's certainly worth a full price ticket from theater.
All right.
It's a good vehicle for a lot of really solid performances.
I'll see if I can catch that before we do our end of year deliberations.
I definitely do that. And speaking of end of year deliberations, they would be incomplete without The Post,
which I have yet to see, and I plan on doing so this weekend, I think, because I think tomorrow I'm going to try to see The Phantom Thread.
The Post is the most serious-minded Mr. Show sketch I've ever seen. You know, because Bob Odenkirk and David Cross are both in the film. So anyway,
that's what I hear people say that, and that sounds like it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's first of all, they're only on screen together for a couple of moments, and Odenkirk gets much more screen time than Cross does. But I think it's great that they're on screen at the same time delivering lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's nice. And outside of that,
I will say, just an aside real quick, you haven't watched Arrested Development, and there's an episode of that where they're on screen together because David Cross is a regular cast member on Arrested Development. So this isn't the first time we've seen somebody intentionally team them up.
Well, yeah, but this is a little bit different.
This is a Spielberg film. I remember seeing the trailer for this and being like, oh my God, Bob Odenkirk's in a Steven Spielberg film.
And then
Ken, I keep forgetting that you have not seen Arrested Development, and you really just have to.
This guy.
The half-hour comedies are the toughest for me to start and get into. I would just
like, if you have some time in the next like after we finish our Shituary project, like just try it, because the show is just absurdly dense with
it's
visual gags and running jokes.
I didn't even watch the most recent season of BoJack Horseman.
That's really good too.
I didn't either.
You should. It's really good.
It's even more so than BoJack Horseman. It's like this show has jokes coming at such a fast clip that you probably have to watch an episode at least a couple of times to catch all of them.
Arrested Development is like if Christopher Guest made the Royal Tenenbaums as a TV show.
Wow,
is it accurate?
Not a bad analogy.
Yep.
So The Post, the first, before I get into even the story of The Post feels very much like a classic All the President's Men kind of movie, and in fact it deals with material that leads up to what happens in All the President's Men in a lot of ways. In fact, the movie ends referencing that would be essentially this movie kind of plays like a prequel to All the President's Men. You know,
well, that's funny you should say that, because there was also that Liam Neeson movie that came out this year.
Oh God, the one where he played
Deep Throat.
No, he didn't play Deep Throat.
He didn't play. Oh no, he was in the movie about Deep Throat, though. Right? I didn't see it, so I don't know much about it. I just know that the reason I bring it up because we're in a similar situation as we are, as we had just been into Dunkirk / Darkest Hour / Their Finest. Now we not in the same year, but now we have another 3 companion films about similar events.
Oh yeah, that's right. Mark Felt, the man who brought down the White House. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, he did play Deep Throat. That movie, by the way, I didn't see it, but I heard nothing but bad things. And if you look at the makeup job they do on him, holy shit, it's terrible.
Okay, I didn't hear anything about it. I just know that he was in a movie and Deep Throat was involved, and I didn't know anything else beyond that.
I remember this now. In fact, I think, let me just pull something up really quick.
Which is a bummer, because All the President's Men is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, and I completely agree with that.
Fantastic film.
Yeah, the Mark Felt movie, by the way, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 34%. So I might see if it comes to streaming. Who knows? Maybe it's surprisingly good, but that's not a good sign.
It'll come to streaming.
So anyway, The Post kind of plays like a prequel to All the President's Men, and what it is simply a kind of political thriller that tells the story of the Pentagon Papers, which was a set of a set of documents that were stolen from the Rand Corporation, which was working on behalf of the White House. in basically the Secretary of Defense's office. And these documents were classified documents going all the way back to the Eisenhower administration. And essentially, it made the argument that President Eisenhower, all the way up to Nixon, all were aware of the fact that there was no way of winning Vietnam, that it was a waste of time. And the only reason why none of them did anything to stop it, essentially, was the political capital that it would destroy because they admitted to a failure.
Okay. And
we're talking reams of documents that lead up to that conclusion. And so what happened was, and the actual history of this was, the New York Times printed some of these papers in like an initial article, and the White House essentially put a gag order on them and was going to take them to court, saying, you're printing classified documents, and this is going to be detrimental to the war effort, and by printing these papers, you could be getting people killed. The irony, of course, of continuing the war to begin with is getting people killed. So the New York Times printed this, and in response, the Washington Post managed to obtain copies of this document. And despite the fact that there was a court order against them doing it, or rather against the New York Times doing it, they chose to print it as well. And it led to sort of a movement where a bunch of other newspapers also printed the papers at the same time. And the idea being that it was a defiant effort to tell the White House that you can't suppress information that's this important for our country.
Yeah.
And this movie is incredibly politically relevant today because it deals directly with the responsibility of newspapers to report facts as they come in and to interpret them. And they may not always be perfect, but newspapers are the so-called fourth estate. They are there to safeguard the country against basically total control of what by our elected officials.
Yeah, didn't you have a theory like a couple months ago that this was Steven Spielberg's exchange for directing Ready Player One?
I called it his apology in advance. Now, I haven't seen Ready Player One. I can't say whether it's a good movie or not, but I've seen the trailer, and the trailer doesn't look very good to me. And my theory is, say Ready Player One comes out and it turns out to be garbage. To me, this is Steven Spielberg saying, all right, well, I've just finished that movie, and they're doing special effects on it. God, that was garbage. What can I do so that I don't look like a shitheel? Because my last movie was the BFG, and if I do both the BFG and Ready Player One in a row, that could be the end.
Sure, yeah. Well, I have not read Ready Player One, but what I will say is, what I've heard about it is the only good thing about Ready Player One is that the audiobook is narrated by Will Wheaton.
That's the best thing.
That is the only good thing that I've heard about. I mean,
I like
people have been saying that is the only good thing about it.
I like Will Wheaton, but his personality isn't enough for me to get an audiobook. If I'm going to get an audiobook because of someone's voice, it's going to be like Jeremy Irons or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that, or
that'd be a hell of an audiobook.
Yeah. Or I love the audiobook version of World War Z because it's like a Hollywood movie cast reading these narratives of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, where else do you get like Nathan Fillion or Mark Hamill or Carl Reiner just telling a story about zombies?
Right.
Anyway, so the Post, besides, first of all, you can't speak about the Post without speaking about the fact that two of the great actor emeritus in Hollywood, Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, are united in this film. I believe for the first time. I don't think have they been in the same film before?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so, but I feel like I'm missing something.
Salt the Oracle of Bacon.
I was just going to say that.
All right, I'm gonna look that up and see. So, Tom Hanks for The Memories, and Meryl Streep. Find link.
While you're doing that, I noticed something. All right, I was reading the Wikipedia page of Hook the other day, and the pirate that gets put in the boo box is Glenn Close in drag. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I'm sorry, what?
There's a scene in Hook when Peter first gets put on the pirate ship where he takes this pirate and puts him in a box with like scorpions, and that pirate is Glenn Close in drag.
Right on.
You're right.
Yeah, I never noticed that before, and then I read it on the Wikipedia page. I was like, "Holy fucking shit!"
Wow. Yes, this is their first appearance together.
Yeah, the Oracle of Bacon shows that this is their only connection that's direct. So, yep. So either way, this movie, first of all, they're really great, and this is the concept. Meryl Streep's character in this film is Kay Graham, Katharine Graham was the heiress who inherited the Washington Post from her family following the suicide of her husband. And her character that she plays is basically as this person who she loves the newspaper. It's very close to her, and she feels like it's kind of the last big connection that she has of her husband. And she wants everything, the best that she can for it. But she's also sorely out of her league in terms of understanding the business aspect. And she's trying desperately in the midst of this scandal, which could threaten to destroy a oncoming business deal that she has. And she's struggling to catch up with that. Meanwhile, Tom Hanks plays Ben Bradley, who was the executive director of the paper. So it's sort of the two of them face off in a way against each other. Well, there's this great kind of dance they perform where he's in charge of the paper. It's his baby, but she owns the baby.
Okay.
And the way they get some solid interplay with each other. The vast majority of the rest of the cast are other members of the Post who experience the story in their own ways. You have Sarah Paulson, Bob Odenkirk, Tracy Letts, Bradley Whitford, Bruce Greenwood. As the one thing that I enjoy, this is yet another major movie of the year in which Michael Stuhlbarg plays a role. He plays Abe Rosenthal, who was head of the New York Times.
Mike Stuhlbarg had a good year.
Yeah, I mean, how many friggin' major motion pictures is... okay, so he was in
at least
Post.
3 out of the top of my head. The
Post, The Shape of Water, Call Me By Your Name, all probably going to be Oscar nominated. Mm-hmm. And then also Miss Sloane he appeared in.
Was that was this year?
Oh, well, I guess, was it actually released in 2016? Yeah, I guess it was
that
November
was almost definitely 2016.
Yeah, so late in the year, but whatever.
Still, I mean, he's a good actor that gets good work, and clearly his agent is doing a very good job.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's also got television because he was in Fargo.
Right. Have you watched the Fargo TV show, either of you?
I saw the first season and some of the second, and I didn't like. I actually do want to continue it, but it's another show that kind of fell on the back burner for me.
Sure, I got friends that tell me to watch it all the time. I haven't seen it yet.
The first season I have not seen the second one, but the first season is really fucking good.
I agree. Yeah, the first season is fantastic, and honestly, I was liking the second season too. I just, for one reason or another, I fell off. I need to get back into it. I think I just wasn't in the right headspace.
Oh yeah, you had to be for that.
But anyway,
I've heard a few complaints I've heard about the Post is that it feels very it feels like Spielberg on autopilot. It's very workmanlike in terms of Spielberg's talent in a way that isn't exactly memorable or compelling.
If you told me this movie was directed by Clint Eastwood, I wouldn't be surprised. It does have that workman-like effort where it's a very solidly framed movie. I mean, I can't complain about the cinematography. It did its job very well. The performances are solid and well served. It has, the pacing is perfect. It's just, it lacks it lacks the character that you might see in something. Like we were talking about Darkest Hour earlier. Darkest Hour similarly took a story that should have been just a bunch of people talking at each other for 90 minutes, or 2 hours, and it made it really dynamic thing, and it gave it a lot of life. This is closer to, say, Spotlight, which Spotlight was an excellent movie, but when I talk about it having like visual flourish, it does its job. It's just not it's not going to wow you with its visual. And so let me put it this way: it's a great, solid movie. It's just I don't think it's going to win any of the major awards, just because I think it's it does its job.
It's another Spielberg film.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a Spielberg film, and I would say it's even one of his better recent films.
In terms of BFG and Ready Player One.
Oh God, well, I haven't. I will not speak to that yet. Definitely better than BFG. Holy shit. But no, I would say better than Bridge of Spies. I would say better than Lincoln. I really
Lincoln was way too long.
I enjoyed Lincoln, but better than Lincoln. I enjoyed War Horse a lot, but this is still probably better than that. Tintin, it's hard to compare that to this, but completely different movies. But I would say if you really enjoyed Tintin, yeah, it's probably on that same level.
I did really enjoy Tintin.
Yeah, and it completely. I mean, comparing the two, that's like two diametrically opposed films in terms of what it's doing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say the easiest comparison between The Post and his other films is Lincoln, and I think this definitely outdoes Lincoln. And if you're talking about his entire career, it sits comfortably. It's in my opinion, Empire of the Sun is his masterpiece. Some people will disagree with me.
I wouldn't call Munich a masterpiece, but I really like it, except for the part where Eric Bana's character has an orgasm when he remembers a massacre of people.
Oh God!
You remember that scene?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean,
other than that, Munich is a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I would say Empire of the Sun is probably my favorite. Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Raiders of the Lost Ark are very close for me.
There's a line in Knocked Up about how they like Munich, and that's like the only thing that I remember. But I haven't seen it, but even like it didn't get a lot of advertising, did it?
Munich?
I don't remember. What was that, like 09?
05.
05. Shit. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I do want to mention this. This is a complete aside, but since we're talking Spielberg movies, Hawk, have you seen The Sugarland Express?
No, but I've had an interest in it.
The movie is. I know you like movies that kind of set in like set kind of out in the outskirts, and this isn't like a revenge movie or anything like that, but it's kind of a road movie in which two criminals are on the run from the cops, and it's they're on the run across the entire state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got great performances. William Atherton, Goldie Hawn, Ben Johnson, they're all really good in it. And this is William Atherton long before William Atherton was just random dick in movies. He's actually he's the romantic co-lead to Goldie Hawn. Yeah, if you can imagine that being a thing, of him being essentially the romantic co-lead.
William Atherton has a strange career.
I remember
I love it when he pops up and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I remember reading about that a while ago and wanting to see it, but I haven't thought about it. I don't think in a very long time. So yes, I'll have to re-add that to my list.
yeah. Spielberg's early movies like Duel and Sugarland Express are totally worth seeing. And I have not seen his. He also directed a TV movie called Something Evil, which was like a horror movie. I've never seen that, and I've wanted to find it. I'm sure. You know what? Honestly, I'll bet if I Googled it, I could probably find it somewhere.
Oh, you'll find it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also never seen his short film Amblin, which of course he named his company after.
Yeah, I immediately thought of E.T.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's I really like early Spielberg. When I watched Close Encounters, rewatched it recently, I really was won over by the gorgeous visuals and such. So it's one of those things where I think people overlook the fact that Spielberg is a damn fine director.
Hey, Raiders is the shit.
I really want Spielberg to go back to the kind of like high concept adventure movie. That it would not be Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal
or the BFG.
Well, Ready Player One is ostensibly supposed to be an adventure story, but
it's not. I mean, it's not what I would consider high concept. It's like, everybody has VR in the future because life sucks. It's like that's not a fucking. That is a plot device for video game references.
It's is Ready Player One like Second Life? Like I could use any reference I want. We can reference anything.
Well, Spielberg said that he had no problem getting permission to use all those references in there. So like Iron Giant, Tron, Freddy, like all that shit. Apparently he was able
Freddy
to use
Krueger
all of those.
Is in the trailer for Ready Player One?
Yeah, for like a second.
Huh, I missed that. Okay.
Now, Bill, have you seen Duel, by the way?
Duel's awesome.
I don't know. No, I don't know. No.
Duel was Spielberg's, for all intents and purposes, it was his first movie. It was a TV movie in 1971 starring Dennis Weaver. And it was from a script by Richard Matheson, who, if you've not heard of him, he wrote The Omega Man. He wrote The Night Stalker, another good TV movie. Bunch of Twilight Zone stuff.
The original Twilight Zone.
I'm pretty sure he did Twilight Zone. Hold on. Yeah, he wrote 14 episodes of it.
Okay.
Yeah, including Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. So, anyway, Duel. The concept is very much pre-Jaws. By the way, Richard Matheson also credited screenwriter for Jaws 3D. But yeah,
that's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not. I wonder if he had any part in Jaws 3 People Zero. That was the original Jaws 3. It was a comedic version that it was.
Right.
But anyway, the concept of Duel is Dennis Weaver is a businessman who's traveling across the desert on his way home, and he passes a slow-moving truck. And the truck driver proceeds to, for the rest of the film, terrorize the fuck out of him, chasing him around. And like Jaws, it's an unseen villain. You never see the truck driver. You just see this truck bearing down on him in his shitty little car.
What the hell?
It's a tense friggin' movie. It's a tight 90-minute experience, and considering it's a made-for-TV movie, it's cinematic as hell.
I remember the first time I watched the movie Joyride, and I was like, why are they fucking with this trucker? Yeah. Why don't you just stop?
Well, imagine if that trucker just did nothing. Like, imagine you're on the road in the middle of nowhere, and this giant semi-truck with a trailer just keeps riding your ass and trying to run you off the road.
Wouldn't you just pull over and let him pass?
Oh, he tries that. Oh. It doesn't work. The cool thing about this movie is it blurs the line between, like, there's they hint at it possibly being something sort of paranormal or hypernormal. But they never fully go into that. It's one of those things where it's the hint of it that's interesting, because the trucker always turns up in places, and his truck is able to do things that trucks really shouldn't do. But there's enough explanation where you're like, well, maybe his truck is souped up, or maybe he's a demon from hell.
What if they remake this as Fast and the Furious 9, and it's like Vin Diesel's getting harassed by this trucker, and he's like calling up his buddies, and they all I don't know.
Oddly enough, though, Bill, the tensest scene in Duel, you talked about why doesn't he just pull over? The tensest scene is when he does pull over and he goes into a restaurant and he realizes that anyone in that restaurant could be the trucker, and he has no idea who it is, and him just eating a sandwich, sitting there trying to figure out who is this person who's stalking him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Duel's great.
Yeah, look it up.
My list of movies I gotta watch is just endless.
Get started, bro.
Oh, by the way, Duel was on Svengoolie, so.
Was it? Okay, they showed Godzilla Rates Again on Saturday. I had it on at work.
That's a classic.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the final movie of the night, which I think is also one of the most truly charming things I've seen in ages, which is Paddington 2. Hawk, why don't you give us a start here?
So you guys remember when I just completely championed Paddington 1 back in 2015 as a great kids movie, which I was surprised when I saw it because the trailers for the movie were not very good.
It was a great comeback for Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. The trailers were like, oh, look at this goofy ass bear from the producer of Harry Potter.
Right. And yeah. The trailers were definitely like, they were marketing it to, and maybe the UK trailers were different for the movie, but I feel like
different.
Yeah, they were trying to get that like Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks crowd. Like you like CG creatures in live action.
Yeah, exactly. And then the movie ended up being really, really good, like fantastic. And couple years later, Paddington 2 is even better, which is astonishing, especially, not only is it a better movie than the original, but before Paddington 2, there was a trailer for Peter Rabbit, which looks like, once again, the lowest common denominator adaptation of a kid's story with CGI creatures and famous actors doing shenanigans.
Yeah, they're showing a lot of Peter Rabbit trailers during wrestling lately, so I keep seeing them.
That's hilarious.
And I think the main thing, the reason why it's poorly marketed in the U.S. is because Paddington Bear's always been a very British kind of character.
Oh, yeah.
And while he was popular for a time in the U.S., it was, I would say, kind of more of a niche thing.
Sure.
I'd never read a book. I remember seeing teddy bears in the store, like with the jacket and the hat. And I never came across a book. Did they make it into like an animated series at one point?
So it was a live action series, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a live action series where the bear was stop motion.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
And there was a few. There was the 1975 version, which is the one I'm actually familiar with because growing up, there were a bunch of tapes at the video store that we used to rent that had that. And that
before continue with what you were saying.
In the U.S., the Paddington show TV show was, I think, on like HBO or PBS, one of those two.
You know what's really
PBS.
big? You know what's really big with kids right now, and it I shouldn't care, but I kind of do. Is this show called Peppa Pig, and it is a UK production. It's fucking terrible, and it's not just because the animation's bad, because it is. It's like shitty Flash animation. It's just that this little girl pig, Peppa Pig, she constantly disobeys her parents, and
Wait a second, I just Googled it, and Peppa Pig's face is a penis.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just straight up a penis. I mean, this is a thing that kids watch.
My niece goes ape. Like, if you want her to sit down and shut up, put that on, and she will sit there and watch it. And
Hawk, I just posted the link in the chat. I want you to look at this and tell me.
I think he knows. Do you know?
No. I know Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
That's a dick.
Peppa Pig is just mindless trash to shut your children up. And I don't like that at all. I think that if you're going to give children entertainment, give them something that they can get something out of, even if it's not like educational, or if it's going to like, put them on the right path in life or whatever, like just a good story, a good character, effort.
Well, that is
not that at all. And it feels like I saw the first Paddington, but I need to re-see it. But Paddington felt like the real deal. You know what I mean?
It is. So Paddington is both Paddington films are directed by Paul King, who is best known for The Mighty Boosh, which I love. Yep. His style is very Wes Anderson flavored, but with his own kind of fingerprint on it. These two movies are so close to my heart in terms of their themes. It's not just CGI animals and fart jokes. It's Paddington comes to America, or I'm sorry, comes to the UK from Peru, and his demeanor is always one of manners and kindness and looking for the best in everybody. It doesn't really matter who he's talking to, or who he runs into, or who even dislikes him.
The Wikipedia description of Paddington as a character, he's described as being always polite, addressing people as Mr., Ms., or Mrs., rarely by first names, and kind-hearted, though occasionally inflicting hard stares on those who incur his disapproval. He has an endless capacity for innocently getting into trouble, but he tries so hard to get things right.
Yes, he is just incorrigibly good-natured and well-intentioned, but also very, very clumsy. He looks for the best in everybody, and even if somebody just dislikes him, he will treat them with kindness, because that is how he was raised. So in the second film, his aunt is 100 years old, and he wants to give her the best birthday present that he can. Now, she always wanted to see London, and she's not able to because she's a 100-year-old bear who talks. And in lieu of that, he comes across a pop-up book, a very famous pop-up book of London, and he wants to give that to her as a birthday gift so that she can finally see what London is. This is illustrated through a beautiful scene where the camera kind of swoops into the pop-up book and shows him and his aunt just walking around in pop-up London and exploring it.
Oh, that sounds awesome, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the first nice hallmarks of the movie's style, which is just beautiful. And there was a Reddit post where someone was like, okay, if you're not sure if you're going to like Paddington 2, here's the scene. And then like every comment was like, holy shit, that's beautiful. And everybody responded like, that didn't know much about Paddington was like, I thought this was just another one of these crappy kids movies. But now that I'm seeing this scene, I definitely want to see the whole movie.
This is a weird comparison to make, but Hawk, have you ever played any the Kingdom Hearts games?
Yeah.
When I talk to people that play Kingdom Hearts games, they're always like, oh, that 100 Acre Wood shit. And I'm like, dude, the 100 Acre Wood shit, like it's you go in there, it's charming, you're immersed in this little world. What is it with bears? Obviously Norm of the North.
What is it with bears? Bears
obviously Norm of the North is fucking terrible, but you got like Winnie the Pooh is usually solid. We Bear Bears on Cartoon Network is great.
Yeah.
Paddington.
Country Bears.
Yep.
Yogi Bear. Yeah, I was gonna say Yogi Bear wasn't good either, but
well, I mean, the thing about
with Paddington and Winnie the Pooh mostly are the only objectively great ones, but they are so great that they take the lion's share of great emotional talking bear pictures.
And I think
Little Bear on Nick Jr. was charming as shit back in the day.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is Winnie the Pooh is sort of the rural. The rural bear, the bear in the woods, and it's sort of the equivalent of all of the characters in Winnie the Pooh are the different sides of Christopher Robin's personality as a child, representing a kid at play. And Paddington Bear, on the other hand, takes things to more of an urban setting, and in that urban setting, it is similarly, Paddington represents, the innocence of a child at play, but with these wonderful little life lessons of, being kind and gentle and polite to others, and paying it forward. That's the big thing that Paddington really tends to do as a character.
Yes, an early scene of Paddington 2 is he's coming out of the house for the day, and there are people going about their business for the day, and he gives the lady on the bike a marmalade sandwich, and she's like, "Oh, thank you, for the sandwich." And then there's the guy who always forgets his keys, and he's like, "Don't forget your keys." And the guy's like, "Oh crap!" And then he catches the door right before he forgets his keys and gets back into his house to get his keys. And the whole town has really allowed Paddington to assimilate himself into their lives, and he's made them all better for it. And then later on in the movie, when he's not at the town, the girl on the bike is grumpy because she hasn't had any breakfast, and the guy forgets his keys and has walked out of his house. And the impact of Paddington's presence in the town is very very profound in both of these scenes.
That's kind of funny because I just saw, for the first time ever, I watched It's a Wonderful Life over the holidays.
Yeah.
Paddington's the richest man in town.
Yeah, there's kind of a light version of that established.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, no conversation about this film is complete without referencing the fantastic performance of Hugh Grant as Phoenix Buchanan, an actor extraordinaire and the film's main villain.
Yes, this Hugh Grant is like a romantic comedy kind of guy, but with this and Florence Foster Jenkins, he is really, really starting to remind people that he is a pretty fantastic actor.
I liked him in Cloud Atlas, by the way.
He was great in Cloud Atlas. I mean, I love everything about Cloud Atlas. That is one of my favorite films. And
as the pirate captain in Pirates, the Pirates Band of Misfits, or it's actually called in Britain, The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists.
Yeah,
which
yes.
Perfect sign of the stupidity of Americans. They won't watch anything with science in the title.
Well, they changed the title of Harry Potter from the Philosopher's Stone to the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah, because
why is it spelled like that?
We have to say wizard in the title, or Thortherer, or no one's going to understand that this is about Thortherer.
Speaking of which, Ken, the offer does still stand for you and I to watch the Harry Potter movies on HBO next month.
Oh, dude, you should totally do that. Yeah, because Ken's never seen them.
Yeah, we were gonna do a themed week or month. Probably not a week. That's a lot of fucking movies for a week.
The first time I ever watched them was before Deathly Hallows 1 had come out. I binged them all in a week. So it's
okay. I see. Yeah, so I've been watching. I have seen every Harry Potter movie in the theaters since the first one. So,
oh my God, Bill, we are going to have to. Speaking of Hugh Grant, one of Hugh Grant's first films in a major role was Ken Russell's The Lair of the White Worm. That's a movie that's long on our to see list because, as you know, Ken Russell is a fucking madman.
Yes. Yeah, I've never heard of that film.
Oh, yeah. It's one of his more notorious ones.
Huh.
Yeah. The Lair of the White Worm is.
I don't like the title. The title just gives me all kinds of implications. Butts.
It also stars Peter Capaldi.
And if it's Ken Russell, so if it was about butts, I wouldn't be surprised.
So actually, get this: Hugh Grant and Peter Capaldi also in Paddington 2. It's a reunion.
Yes, they are.
Peter Capaldi's the new Doctor Who, right? Or the previous Doctor Who.
The most recent one, before this one, yeah.
Okay.
So Hugh Grant in Paddington 2 is a character actor named Phoenix who is... so it turns out that this book, this pop-up book that Paddington wants for his aunt is going to fetch a very high price. And he's willing to do that by working a bunch of adorably odd jobs like window washing and whatnot. And again,
failing at being a barber.
Failing at being a barber, which that barber scene really demonstrated Paul King's really strong grasp of visual humor.
Oh yeah, that sequence is a total throwback to classic silent comedy.
Yes, there are several throwbacks to silent comedy in this film, especially Buster Keaton.
Mm-hmm, certainly.
Which are best left unspoiled, with one of the funniest ones being towards the climax. But then Phoenix realizes this pop-up book is actually a treasure map of sorts. And he plots to steal this book and use the treasure to resurrect his failed one-man show. And then Paddington takes the fall for this and has to go to prison.
One thing that's great about Hugh Grant's character in this is he's an actor who is so narcissistic that he's reached the point where he stopped taking acting roles because he didn't want to work with other actors, because he only any other actor, regardless of the role, would upstage him in his own mind.
Not only that,
and
he
so
converses with himself as his different characters.
And he's reduced because of this to starring in dog food commercials.
Ah, yes, the dog food commercial featuring the dog costume from The Shining.
Oh God, yeah.
Is that for like legit, or are you just making a joke?
It looks kind of like it.
It's pretty.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty strong. Like I think that is a low key reference to The Shining.
That's a weird reference to make in a children's film.
I would say it's probably not necessarily intentional, but the effect that it has certainly, yeah, it could easily have been. And anyway, so Paddington gets framed for the theft of this book by Hugh Grant, and as a result, he goes to prison. And lo and behold, he meets up with Knuckles McGinty. A prison cook played by Brendan Gleeson. Also one of the best performances of his career, like you.
Yes. So I didn't see any trailers for Paddington 2. Like I was so intent on not watching trailers for Paddington 2 that when I posted my trailers review for this movie, I actually had somebody else come into the room and search the trailer and post it so I wouldn't have to watch a second of that trailer. Like I don't think I've ever seen a movie where I haven't watched a single moment of footage than Paddington 2.
I think the great thing about Paddington 2 is how it takes these base storylines that have been in so many kids' stories before it, such as, the character meeting up with gruff individuals and warming their hearts.
Yes.
And it, because of how well staged and written these scenes are, you don't think for a minute about how you've seen these scenes in a million other kids' movies in the past, because they're just so charming to watch. And
Yes.
Paddington is such a well-drawn and fascinating character. It should also be noted that, by the way, Sally Hawkins, most recently of The Shape of Water fame, plays Mary Brown, who is the wife of Henry Brown, who adopted Paddington.
Played by Hugh Bonneville.
They're from the first movie, right?
Yeah, they're in the first movie. But it's one of those things where Sally Hawkins has now become, hot because of Shape of Water. So
she fucked a fish. I'm kidding. I haven't seen The Shape of Water, but that's
she fucks a fish.
Yeah. But not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, you know what? There's probably a lot of things wrong with that, but the movie makes a good case.
If it's
It was kind of weird in Paddington too. Like having seen Shape of Water, she gets naked like a lot in that movie.
Oh God.
And and it was just kind of like I saw her a little bit differently in Paddington 2. It's like I know what you did.
Take it off.
No, not like that.
God.
Not like that. Her character in Paddington 2, like in 1, is just
what's her
so
name? Mrs.
sweet
Brown?
and so loving.
Like Mrs. Brown, I saw you in a lovely film called The Shape of Water. I wonder if you could take your top off for me.
No, she's very sweet in this movie, like she was in the first one, and I really like Sally Hawkins as an actress because she really is a very I don't want to say like an emotional actress, like in the terms that she cries a lot, but her acting it has a lot of emotion, especially non-verbally. She's got a very expressive face. And I think that like her pure love in this movie, she really conveys that really, really well.
Suddenly I have the Herman Hermits playing in my head. Mrs. Brown's got a lovely daughter.
Ah, there you go.
But yes,
my love has gone away.
Brendan Gleeson as Knuckles McGinty was one of the best surprises of the movie. Like just seeing him turn around, I was like, oh, that's Brendan Gleeson. And then the way his character evolves throughout the movie is great. And then there's this also really again, best left mostly unspoiled. This really awesome montage of how Paddington's goodwill changes not only the demeanor of the prison, but the entire appearance of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and to the point where he inadvertently leaves a red sock in the laundry and turns all of their uniforms pink. And while that becomes a brief source of consternation with the prisoners, soon they seem to embrace it because they certainly don't make any effort to change the look.
No,
I
not
just
at all.
Googled Brendan Gleeson, and I don't know if you guys know this, but he played Winston Churchill in Into the Storm, a television movie.
I do know. I have seen
on, HBO.
Interesting connection.
It's Into the Storm was actually a sequel. There was also The Gathering Storm, which I believe it was. Who was it? Was it Michael Gambon? Or no, Albert Finney played Churchill.
Yeah, Albert Finney.
Yeah, and both of those are solid TV movies. I would put them in the same category that I would put like the HBO TV movie All the Way, where, because of the limitations of a television budget, you can't exactly do anything too flashy, but it's solidly acted and really entertaining. But because of the fact that Darkest Hour does what it does so well,
this guy is the father of Domhnall Gleeson. Okay, that makes sense to me for some reason. I don't even know who this dude is, but that's. I was like, why have I heard this name?
He was Mad-Eye Moody in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
That's where I know him from. Okay, yeah. Thank you. I'm sitting here like he looks so familiar.
Yeah, he's in a shitload of stuff. He was in AI. Gangs of New York. He was
Guard.
I will say this, Ken, when you do watch the Harry Potter films, you're just going to be like, oh, that British character actor. You're going to be fucking, it's going to be like bingo for you.
And actually, you will especially love Brendan Gleeson as a character called Mad-Eye Moody.
Yeah, he's great. He's one of my favorite
I won't even spoil who Mad-Eye Moody is or why he's called that, but he's an awesome character. And
he's one of my favorite professors in the series.
And for you, Bill, this movie is a similar experience of bingo with British actors because there are so many great British character actors that either play bit parts or supporting roles that you didn't expect them to be there,
right?
But you're so happy they are. Ken, what else have you got about Paddington 2 since I've been doing most of the talking?
Well, Paddington 2 is definitely an example of one of those movies where you see a lot of wonderful British actors. Michael Gambon does appear.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
He is the voice of Uncle Pastuzo, who's Paddington's uncle.
Okay. Michael Gambon's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have Imelda Staunton, who voices Paddington's aunt. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with her work, you would recognize her from things like Much Ado About Nothing, which is the Kenneth Branagh film. You know what? I'm just going to say this because I read this on Wikipedia just a moment ago. I guess she plays a character in Harry Potter, Dolores Umbridge.
She's an important character in the 5th film.
Yes,
yeah, I haven't.
She's basically the main antagonist of the Order of the Phoenix, which is the 5th
one.
Yeah. Which honestly, that's the only one that wasn't written by Steve Kloves.
Yeah,
it's one of the better scripts in the series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We'll get into that later. I would disagree, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that at a different point of time in this podcast.
Fair enough.
And speaking of wonderful British character actors, Jim Broadbent.
Yes.
Also in Harry Potter.
Yeah. I knew that was coming next. I didn't even know that was the case, but I was like, yes, he's someone who would definitely be cast in Harry Potter somehow. And yes, I will go ahead and agree to do a week of Harry Potter, assuming HBO still has them available in February.
Okay. And if not, we'll figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, Jim Broadbent is wonderful. That's all I have to say about that.
I would have loved to see more Jim Broadbent in this movie, but what we get is also good. Oh,
was Jim Broadbent in the first one?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larger role in the first. And by the way, if you have not seen the first, Bill, it's on Netflix.
I did not know it was on Netflix. I watched it. What did that come out? 2014, 2015?
Mm-hmm.
US 2015, UK 2014.
okay. I might have been drunk or something. I did not give that movie the proper attention that it deserves. So I need to go back and check that out before I get into the sequel.
Richard Ayoade, is that how you say his name from the IT crowd?
Ayoade? I'm not sure. I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
he's like great. A 20-second cameo in this movie.
Okay. He was on The Mighty Boosh.
Yep.
He played
Yep.
Oh, I cannot remember his character's name. He was one of the shamans. But yeah.
Yeah. This is the kind of movie where, like, so at the very, very end, the final scene, you can probably guess how it's going to end. At the very beginning of the scene, you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure where they're going to go with this, but it doesn't make it any less just incredibly moving. Like I was like really fighting to hold back tears because it was just such a great ending to the movie. It's when I finished watching it, I was like, I don't really even understand how they could make a kids movie this fucking good. With just everything coming together, it has broad appeal without pandering to either adults or kids. I mean, like a movie like Shrek, which I really, really like, it appeals to both adults and kids because it has kids like bright, fun, colors and humor and stuff, and adults with dick jokes and stuff like that. But this appeals to both age groups by just having this sort of warm, inviting air to it that anybody can love. I think that's kind of a good way to describe it, right, Ken?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're on definitely the right track there.
It's because kind of like stuff like the Shining reference. Like that is not a joke. If it was that, it's not bluntly like, oh, this is a joke only daddy and mommy will get. Like it's just kind of, it's a reference that not everybody's going to get because they maybe haven't seen The Shining, but it's not crass for the sake of making it PG.
And by the way, even if you don't get the reference as a kid, there's funny things about every joke that's told.
Yes, that's a great point.
And it's sort of that's one thing about the British wit that I've always enjoyed. Like one of the great things about Monty Python is that you learn shit watching it. There's so many references to things that you have no basis for understanding, and yet they make those references funny to even someone who has no idea who, say, Proust is, or
the Judean People's Organization, whatever it is.
Judean People's Front and the People's Front of Judea.
There you go. Yeah, that one.
And then the Popular Front. Yes, that's more of. I think one thing that goes amiss there's. The Life of Brian is a deeply British film in that it's really about the fact that there's so many left-wing political parties in Great Britain that makes especially in those days in the 70s, made it so difficult for any left-wing party to hold power because it seems like they hated each other more than they hated the right. And that was sort of the point that movie was making. But yeah, it's British humor. There's something about it that's you can laugh at things even though you don't necessarily 100% get what's being referenced. And
yes,
I find that fascinating.
Yes, totally. And yeah, that's one of the things that made this movie so good is that it's funny in ways that you don't really expect. And my theater wasn't totally full, but the people that were there, I was probably laughing the hardest, but there was still a lot of laughter in the theater. Like everybody really seemed to like it, and I hope that the film does a little bit better. Like it isn't getting the best box office right now.
Well, it's certainly not in the U.S., but consider this: the film was made for $50 million, and internationally, it's made over $150 million.
Yes, and also that's good. Thankfully, Warner Brothers rescued this movie from the Weinstein Company, which is probably thanks to them that this movie got a release in the U.S.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned this. Mad props to Ben Whishaw for his voice performance as Paddington.
I love that Ben Whishaw does Paddington. I mean, as much as I love who was going to do the voice beforehand? It was the King's Speech guy.
Jeffrey Rush?
No. The other one, the King.
Oh, I never saw
Jeffrey Rush is Paddington Bear.
I'm an old man. Paddington is 60 years old.
For a second there, I thought instead,
Colin Firth.
yeah, Colin Firth. I thought for a moment that you were going with Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie
Okay.
Redmayne.
Was Eddie Redmayne the King's Speech?
No. Just before you mentioned King's Speech, I was thinking trying to think of a similarly small and frame British actor.
Okay.
Because Ben Wishaw's not a big
Yeah.
guy. He's kind of a small, lanky guy. And I was thinking, what other British actor fits that profile? And it's like Eddie Redmayne.
No, it was going to be Colin Firth, and then at the last minute, they recast him as Ben Whishaw, and I can't imagine a better choice of casting for the voice of Paddington. Just even in his inflection, the way he talks is just so uniquely suited to that character.
He has an understated, warm voice, and
yes,
it's been utilized quite a bit because he's done a lot of narrating work. He had some great performances in Cloud Atlas, in the various performances there. Most notably, though, he's Q in the new Daniel Craig Bond films, and right. In those roles, he's got this wonderfully understated temperament that he takes that is completely different from the way Desmond Llewellyn performed it. But I think it's a creative take on the role.
Yes, very much so.
So anyway, that having been said, we've spoken about all the films that we have to cover this week. And we'll just quickly mention that coming up this weekend, we're going to be seeing Call Me By Your Name is getting a expanded release. So I will probably be seeing that.
Good.
Phantom Thread is also coming to the area. Yep. So that's also something that I know that I will probably be seeing. In fact, you know what? Let me see.
I have been told that Phantom Thread is Paul Thomas Anderson's best film, so I could not be more excited to see that.
I've heard mixed on that, but I'm fully willing to give it a shot. Now, besides that, I probably will see 12 Strong, that movie about Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Den of Thieves, I really could care less.
I'll probably see Den of Thieves because Gerard Butler is in such reliably terrible movies these days that I almost can't resist.
Yeah.
Did you watch the one with Jennifer Aniston, The Bounty Hunter?
The what? The Bounty Hunter?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that was not good. That was before his that was before his fun bad movies like London Has Fallen. Not Olympus Has Fallen. I hated that one. London Has Fallen. Geostorm.
Let's see if we got a Rotten Tomatoes score for that movie yet. It currently has. Oh, interesting.
What?
Wow, Rotten Tomatoes isn't even listing it as opening this weekend.
Den of Thieves?
Yeah. Let me see if on the main site, it only shows Call Me By Your Name and Phantom Thread. Hold on a sec.
I'll see if there's anything on Metacritic. I guarantee you that's not being screened for critics.
So what that means, by the way, is the last major 2017 release is coming next week with Hostiles.
Right.
It's expanding next week. And Zach and I have this thing where we've noticed that it seems like there is a race between theaters to be the last one to release a 2017 movie to wide release. For instance, and the problem that creates is it's almost always a movie that ends up getting overlooked. Inside Llewyn Davis was one a few years back, and okay, so Den of Thieves, does not have a Rotten Tomatoes score yet.
It's not Metacritic either, so it's not being screened for critics, which can only mean one thing.
Now that said, Hawk, if you're looking for interesting, ridiculous movies, the Nicolas Cage movie Mom and Dad is getting a limited release this week.
If that is coming to Boulder, I will be seeing that. I saw the trailer for it, and I immediately was like, yes.
Have you heard of this one, Bill?
Heard of. I don't even think I watched the trailer for it. I'd seen people kind of talk about it, but I'm kind of in the dark.
It's from one of the directors of Crank, I believe.
The concept is worldwide for a 24-hour period, parents violently turn against their own children.
I'm going to guess it's by the director, one of the directors of Crank that isn't working on the sci-fi show Happy, because one of them is like the showrunner on that, I think.
Yeah, the director is Bryant Taylor, and
Yep.
what?
Crank.
I'm just looking. Yeah, I'm besides Crank, I'm looking to see what else he's done, 'cause
Taylor might be the one.
Ghost Rider 2.
Taylor might be the one that works on Happy. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, he does. He's directed 4 episodes.
Yeah, so
have you guys seen that show yet?
Yeah, I've seen it.
How much of it have you seen?
Like 3 episodes.
Okay. Dude, fucking Baby in the Microwave. Jesus Christ. I gotta keep going. It's really good. I mean, I like it just because it's got a weird enough premise to be right up my alley. But there are like moments where I physically cringe because it's like you fucking went there. Like, that's disturbing.
And I have to admit, I'm a big Patton Oswalt fan, so I have to see it.
Oh yeah. No, oh man, it's really good, and I need to get caught up because there's like 2 episodes I haven't seen, but I love what I've seen so far. Christopher Maloney is fantastic. Patton Oswalt's fantastic. It's by fucking what's that guy's name? The comic book writer that did the original graphic novel.
Mark Mignola?
No, it's not him, is it? It's like Grant Morrison.
Oh, it was Grant Morrison. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Really good stuff. I can't wait to get caught up on that because it's shaping up to be something really cool.
So we will we'll cover some of these topics next week, and following that, because next week is going to be the Maze Runner: The Death Cure. Also,
I'm excited for that.
Was that like a contractually obligated release?
Well, the movie's release was delayed by like a year because one of the main actors suffered a very debilitating injury and had to recover, and they had to stop production.
Yeah, Dylan O'Brien. My roommate went to college with him.
I'm actually I am a modest defender of the Maze Runner movies. The second one in particular is problematic in times, but I'm intrigued by the direction it's heading in. And yes. I think there's some solid performances. And I like the idea that each one expands conceptually. Because in the first one, it's limited to this small little maze puzzle that they're trying to, well, I guess not small, but this basically techno hedge maze that they're trying to make it through alive. And then the second one expands it to this big desert hellscape, and then this next one is going to include like a city too. And I like the concept of that expansion. It's the same thing that, oddly enough, while the Resident Evil movies are fucking terrible, I kind of like the basic concept of each one expands the scope wider.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible movies, and I would not recommend seeing them. But I've longed for a movie that does that, for a movie series that does that effectively.
Right.
So, I mean, the only problem is the way the second movie ends basically means that this one has to be a good movie. Otherwise, the whole thing will kind of fumble and no longer be useful.
It seems pretty confident in what it's doing, so I'm down.
I'm hopeful. All right. Well, see y'all next week.
Goodbye.
Yep.
Goodbye.